Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for joining us for what is the ninth session in the Shoonya Webinar Series, where we bring together leaders from across the clean mobility ecosystem to explore opportunities, challenges, and pathways shaping India's transition to zero pollution mobility. Today's discussion will focus on electrifying e-commerce across first, mid, and last mile. As India's e-commerce sector continues to grow rapidly, so too does the opportunity to decarbonize freight movement. So over the next hour, we'll explore how businesses are transitioning beyond the early pilots, the operational learnings emerging from real-world deployments, and also partnerships and business models enabling EV adoption to scale across freight operations. We'll begin with a short introduction for the Shunya campaign, followed by a brief context-setting presentation by my colleague Abhishek. We'll then move into our panel discussion, featuring an excellent lineup of leaders that you may see on your screen from across the e-commerce and electric mobility ecosystem. So without further delay, let me take a moment to introduce the Shunya campaign, the impact it continues to create through its growing partner network. So as you may see on the screen, Shoonya was launched by Niti Aayog in collaboration with RMI in September 2021 to accelerate zero pollution mobility in India with a specific focus on final mile deliveries and ride hailing. These segments were identified as early opportunities for electrification given their high daily usage and also, relatively centralized operations. So at its core, Shoonya vision has been threefold. First, to build awareness and demand for zero pollution rides and deliveries among consumers. Second, to recognize and amplify industry efforts that are fast tracking India's EV transition. And third, to help chart a credible pathway towards 100% electrification in these segments. Tanishka, if we could move to the next, thanks. So in order to deliver on this vision, Shoonya operates through three key pillars: corporate engagement, resource toolkits, and also consumer awareness. So on corporate engagement, the campaign has brought together over 250 partners, spanning delivery platforms, fleet operators, charging providers, financiers, and OEMs, creating a strong industry backbone for action. And on resource toolkits, Shune has launched three practical tools: a finance toolkit to help navigate EV lending options for consumers, an EV calculator to compare costs and emissions, and a policy map that simplifies national and state EV policies and incentives available. And finally, on consumer awareness, through MyGov collaboration, Shune has reached over 25 million citizens, directly engaging over 2.5 lakh people through campaigns and hosting over 15 public activities to build momentum for zero pollution transport. And together, these efforts have enabled over 1.3 billion zero emission rides and deliveries, resulting in over 1,500 crores in fuel savings to date. I'll now pass it to my colleague, Abhishek, to set the context for today's discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Vaibhav, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar today for discussing a topic that we feel is a very interesting sector. And e-commerce as a sector, if we think about it, is a sector that encompasses a different variety of vehicle types that are used to move goods. So right in the first mile, we have the usage of two-wheelers and various forms of three-wheelers, right up to movement in the mid-mile where we see a lot of heavy-duty trucks being deployed. And so electrification of this sector has impacts across India's EV transition ambitions. And it is exactly visible that the e-commerce ecosystem is something that today also contributes a lot to India's economy. And currently, we estimate that this is about 1.9% of India's GDP. But this is set to rise to around 2.5% of India's GDP in the next 5 years, mainly fueled by the expansion of companies delivering to consumers from online marketplaces and quick commerce companies, but also increasing adoption of B2B-led or business-to-business-led e-commerce services. So overall, this is an industry that will continue to shape India and also shape movement of goods. Already, we're seeing the impact of this growing sector, and over the last 5 years, the number of shipments have grown at a 23% rate year on year. And we predict that in the next 5 years, this will grow at a CAGR of about 28%, and shipments will triple to about 1,500 crore shipments. So this is a massive jump. And already we're seeing that this sort of movement also requires a lot more trucks, a lot more vehicles to enter the ecosystem. And hence, this also presents a great opportunity for electrification and to support decarbonization plans. Next slide, please. So here what we've tried to do is sort of capture the movement of goods across the e-commerce value chain. And largely the movement of goods in the e-commerce value chains follows a very hub and spoke system. And what this means is that you have various what are called fulfillment centers where orders are aggregated, the demand is aggregated from different start points, and then they are mapped to where they must be moved to the different end users. So how this works is in the first mile, if you see the movement from local dealers involves a variety of vehicles, as I've mentioned, two-wheelers and cargo three-wheelers. And this is also the segment where we're seeing a quick transition to EVs. In the mid mile, we have a movement between multiple fulfillment centers. And what it does is it culminates into the major fulfillment centers, where you have these centers located in various tier one cities, such as Delhi, Jaipur, Mumbai, etc. And these cities strategically use the Golden Quadrilateral and other major highways to move goods across the geography. And then at the other end, on the receiver side, the movement is mimicked. One important consideration is that a lot of the e-commerce companies and large third-party logistic operators work with local fleet operators, and hence they plan the logistics movement for them. And hence, it is important that they are also considered when planning for electrification of this sector. Another important consideration is that this entire sector depends on strict delivery times and hence a strict adherence to ensuring that unwanted downtime is minimized. So having looked at how material flows, we would like to now look at how electrification impacts economic viability for operation of vehicles in these different supply chain legs. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what we see here is a 7-year operation period for vehicles, and we compare how a battery electric vehicle compares with a diesel vehicle across 3 segments. So in the light duty segment, which is essentially what you're looking at here, vehicles below the 3.5 ton category, electric vehicles are already cheaper to operate. One important consideration here is that the vehicle price for electric vehicles has come down drastically in the last few years, and we're already seeing close to parity with equivalent diesel vehicles. This combined with large savings in fuel prices makes EV operation in this segment already cost competitive. We then look at medium duty vehicles, and the analysis you're seeing here considers an 18-ton truck. This is currently the most challenging segment when it comes to electrification on an economic sense, mainly because the vehicle price is about 4 to 4.5 times that of diesel trucks. And this large delta in vehicle price is not offset by the fuel savings that occur in switching over to EVs. And so today, this segment poses the biggest challenge when it comes to electrification. But if we look at heavy duty vehicles, such as those in the 55-ton segment, electric trucks are already cheaper to operate today. The reason for this is while initially vehicle prices were higher in this segment, with the introduction of more models, prices have become competitive today, and fuel savings are able to sort of bridge the gap between vehicle prices, and we're seeing a cost competitive operation for heavy duty vehicles. Next slide, please. So with having looked at that, what are some key actions today that we need to look at when it comes to advancing freight electrification? So the first thing is enabling long-term contracts between fleet operators and end users. So in the previous slide, I had mentioned that this is a 7-year operation period. And what we see is that you need such long-term contracts for EVs to, sort of enable economic viability. What long-term contracts also help do is for fleet operators to access low-cost financing in their operations, and OEMs are able to provide, low-cost service agreements. The second important thing is expanding EV model availability across vehicle segments, but especially in the medium-duty segment. So as we just saw that in the 18-ton segment, the vehicle prices are much higher than that of diesel trucks, and more models essentially increases competition and drives cost reductions, but also expansion of EV models across segments such as the 12-ton category can give fleet operators more options to buy vehicles that match their needs. Thirdly, an access to reliable and affordable charging across all value chains. This ensures that there is a minimization of unwanted downtime, and also an easy access to low-cost charging ensures TCO parity with diesel trucks. And lastly, as I had mentioned, most e-commerce companies, they work with small and medium-sized fleet operators, and these are the people actually responsible for movement of goods. And so a conducive ecosystem where policy and action is aligned with the small and medium-sized players can unlock the next level of freight electrification in the e-commerce sector. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you, everyone, and handing it back to you, Vaibhav.
Thanks, Abhishek. Super insightful context. With that, let me bring in our panelists for today, each of whom brings a very unique perspective on e-commerce electrification from across the ecosystem. I'll take a moment to introduce them in alphabetical order. First, we have Mr. Achint Kaul, Vice President, Mobility, Transformation and Strategy at Safexpress. Achint leads Safexpress efforts to advance alternative fuels and sustainable freight solutions across one of India's largest integrated logistics and supply chain networks. So, welcome to the panel, Achint. Next, we have Ms. Gowri Natarajan,
Thank you.
Head of Public Policy and Strategic Partnerships at Yulu. Gowri works closely with governments and industry to advance shared electric mobility, battery swapping, and sustainable urban transport across India. Welcome to the panel, Gowri. Then we have Mr. Maxine Lewis, founder and chairman of Magenta Mobility. Maxine founded Magenta Mobility with a vision of accelerating electric freight movement in India and today leads one of the country's largest electric logistics fleet operators, working across fleet operations, charging solutions, and clean mobility. Welcome to the panel, Maxine. Our next panelist is Mr. R.K. Satapathy, National Head of Transportation and Third-Party Logistics Networks at bigbasket. RK leads transportation operations across BigBasket's nationwide network with a strong focus on operational efficiency, network optimization, and electrification of their fleet. Welcome to the panel, RK. And finally, we have Mr. Vikash Mishra, founder and CEO of MoEVing. With over 2 decades of experience across energy and mobility sectors, Vikash has played a key role in advancing India's EV ecosystem through policy advocacy and business development, and now leads MoEVing's efforts to accelerate electric fleet mobility across India. Welcome to the panel, Vikash. And lastly, my colleague, Ms. Chetna Nagpal, who will be moderating the panel today. Chetna serves as a manager at RMI, where she leads several carbon-free transportation initiatives, including the Shoonya campaign. Chetna works closely with Niti Aayog and several state governments to advance electric mobility and clean transport solutions across India. Over to you, Chetna, to kick off our discussion today.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 9th session of the Shoonya Webinar Series on electrifying e-commerce, scaling EV fleets across first, mid, and last mile. Over the course of the Shoonya Webinar Series, we've been grateful to have had several important panelists cover several topics ranging from charging infrastructure, financing, batteries, fleet electrification, workforce readiness, and more. Today, we focus on a very specific topic, e-commerce electrification, where freight movement across fulfillment centers, distribution hubs, warehouses, stores, and delivery networks is growing rapidly. Electrification can help reduce emissions, improve air quality, and lower operating cost, while creating new opportunities to decarbonize not just first mile, but also mid and last mile logistics. Our discussion today will explore what will it take to make this transition commercially viable and operationally scalable. With that context, let us begin. I'll start with a quick opening round, then move into speaker-specific questions. We'll then take a few audience questions and close with a short rapid-fire round. So I'll really encourage all the audience to keep putting their questions in the chat. We'll try to integrate it in the questions that we are going to ask panelists and even take a few in the end. To get us started, I want to begin with a broad question for everyone on this panel. Over the past few years, e-commerce electrification has evolved from a niche sustainability initiative into a strategic business priority. What began largely with last mile delivery pilots is now scaling and expanding into first and mid mile freight operations as well. So, my opening question for all of you is what has been the most important catalyst for EV adoption in the e-commerce sector? And looking ahead, what milestone would convince you that e-commerce electrification has truly reached scale? I'll go in alphabetical order. Achint, let me begin with you. So over to you.
Hi, Chetna, for having me here. So, electrification for e-commerce is necessary because These are mainly owned by, these are transporters who own vehicles and have drivers running these fleet. Most of these drivers do not have a house wherein they can charge the vehicle. So they need specific premises to charge these places, or the warehouses need to be the place where they charge it. So, in that context, the cost of electricity plays an important role, and also the ease of the person to reach there and pick up his vehicle and things like that, and also the maintenance which can be done while the vehicle is charging. In that aspect, till the time the companies, the principal company or the bigger transporters do not come forward and create a charging infra, it is not possible for running an electric vehicle on scale. Secondly, all these vehicles which are under 3.5 ton, which you call SCVs, need cell balancing. So there is a lot of availability of fast chargers in and across, but there are very few companies which are actually working on slow charging, and that is where the bottleneck is. Uh, to solve this, the best scenario would be that all these companies, when you buy a vehicle, they give you slow chargers along with them. So if somebody can create a slow charging hub with few fast charging options, that would really help. But because slow charging takes a lot of time, commercially it is very difficult to make it viable because of the real estate cost involved. One more thing which you asked is, when do you feel that e-commerce would be, we can say that e-commerce has become sustainable or has moved specifically to electric. When your small commercial fleet crosses 50-60%, that is when you can say that e-commerce has become, heading towards electrification. Coming to the mid-mile section, wherein larger size of trucks are used. In some cases, people are using tractor trailers. In some cases, people are still stuck with 32-foot single axles or multi axles vehicle. Firstly, the options available for 32-foot single axle are very limited, and 32-foot multi axle, the option itself is not there for electric vehicles today. Secondly, when you quote 55 tonners in general, 55 tonners were used in core industries like cement, steel, ports, something which is heavy. So the usage of the truck was very limited. But when you come to e-commerce, the sweating of the asset is already in the tune of 15 to 20,000 kilometers a month. So to make an electric vehicle run 15-20,000 kilometers and then show a benefit of prices being low or OPEX being low is very tough. And that would need a dedicated, so somebody has to come forward, create a dedicated corridor, and then build over it. So very recently, Amazon announced that they would be building a corridor and all that. So something like that needs to happen. So that will take its own sweet time. But yes, by 2030, we presume that a lot of people will move into mid-mile, and then options will also be available. So yeah, that's about from me.
Thank you, Achint. Thank you for touching upon the charging infrastructure bit and also the 50% penetration target. Next, Gowri, coming to you. What has been the important catalyst and what will make you feel that the e-commerce sector has reached scale?
Sure. So, I mean, the context for Yulu is strictly limited to the last mile deliveries, right? So, for us, one of the biggest catalysts, which has also been very organic, is the need that the gig workers had for, an accessible, sustainable, but also cheap, way of moving from place A to place B. That has been the biggest catalyst for us. But it has to be combined, and it continues to be a major sort of parameter based on which gig workers choose different electric mobility companies. Range anxiety is something that these gig workers have when they look at using particular mobility modes. So one of the other catalysts that I think has driven this EV adoption is great products in the market, because of which gig workers are able to transition from, say, ICs to EV modes. I would say the way that I would think of success in terms of EV conversions would be, when different e-commerce companies think of expanding to new geographies, if they're automatically thinking of how to onboard an EV fleet and not even thinking about ICE, I think that would be a great success parameter, which I think is already happening in bits and pieces. And I can speak very confidently for you, for sure. But I also see across different players, it is happening that companies are thinking of EV fleets without even, giving a thought to ICE. So I think that's great success for me.
Thank you, Gowri. Thank you for setting that vision. Maxine, over to you next.
Right. First of all, thank you, Team Shoonya, because the conversation is not where fanciness is, which is the passenger segment. Everyone talks about it. There's a lot of PR around it, a lot of conversation about it. We're now actually talking about the place where business is, where the complexity is, where really where we think the EV takeoff should have happened. The focus should have been here because 70% of, rather 80% of all the goods transported in India still happens on road, right? Unfortunately, what happened is, and this was expected also, a lot of conversation was happening on the passenger side, all of that. But at Magenta, we always believe that it's the goods transport which is going to be important, right? And if we're talking about decarbonization, attack where the problem is bigger. But to answer your question, Chetna, and I'm going to draw from what Gowri said, there were two catalysts for us. Where I've seen from a push to a pull in terms of adoption, right? Because push was happening. I know Yulu for years, Vikash is also here. For years, we have been trying to push the fact that, hey, listen, this is great for your sustainability. But today, the conversation is made from green not on your sustainability report, but green on your balance sheets. That change has happened, and I think that's the important piece. And I believe there are two catalysts. The first catalyst is options of vehicles which actually worked. Because leave aside Magenta, or I'll speak for MoEVing as well, but when a person who picks up a vehicle, be it a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, or four-wheeler, for his daily bread, which means he's providing it as a service to others and not an option of a luxury. All that he wanted is option and options which will work. And we've now, right now, I believe that we are currently at Gen 3 of our vehicles. I remember we've written off a lot of money on Gen 1 vehicles, Gen 2 vehicles, and so today where we stand, the pull is happening because customers have the option, fewer, working options. So I think that's the first catalyst. Now, the second catalyst is also triggered by the first one, is the availability for better finance, right? Because the vehicles were able to perform better and credibility on the battery and the EV ecosystem got better. So what happened earlier is we had to put in equity money. Then we went into loan options, because there again it was now lease. And in lease also, very interestingly, earlier it was pure fintech. Today we have the banks providing loans. Right? So I think these two things I would call out as a catalyst for this transition, especially from Magenta's perspective. Back to you.
Thank you, Maxine. And you rightly pointed out how EV transition in last few years, especially for this sector, has changed from a push to a pull. So that's in itself an achievement for all of us. RK, may I invite your perspective next on the same question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chetna, for having me here. And thank you, Shoonya Initiative, for pushing such a great cause. So for me, I think the catalyst is, of course, the three things. One is great technology. We were able to get great product and driving user adoption. So in early 20s, when we started this as an initiative, of course, other platforms and companies also started the same as an initiative. Things were driven standalone basis where infrastructure was a constraint. The products were not so good. If you look at the last mile, the vehicles were ranging in 50-60 kilometer, where the users were not able to use that for a 8-hour gig directly, and hence it was impacting their earning. And at that time, the availability of better charging or fast charging and battery swapping kind of technologies were not available. And of course, the downtime was basically a driving factor, because of which the user adoption was pretty poor, and the experiences in terms of not having the right repair ecosystem where the downtime was high, and hence people were not very keen on this. But over a period of time, when we started identifying issues, we started working with OEMs, we started working with leasing companies for getting better financing option, and we have been keep on giving this feedback from our side to all the logistics companies who were associated with us. That have definitely helped a lot in terms of evolving the ecosystem to a larger extent. If you look at now, the products are great. There is no range anxiety, and there's technology that is helping in terms of measuring the BMI, and from safety point of view also there's a lot of thing that has been put in place now. All the large scale OEMs are coming with a lot of good products, which is helping in the last mile. We have seen a lot of user adoption coming, where initially we used to struggle on that. Now almost 40% of our fleet in the last mile is electrified. Because of this, I was the one actually driving the EV charter, and back then in the early 20s, our leaders have found that there's a requirement for charging infrastructure, and hence we have put up charging infrastructure at our sites to help the users adopt it better. And since they were not able to charge this from their domestic purpose, we have provided them the charging infrastructure, which has helped in bringing this to great user adoption. Similarly, on the mid-mile part also, if you look at the flexibility of operating in EV, because of low operating cost, is also one of the great drivers, which I think we have started putting a lot of effort. Some of our B2B deliveries, almost 20% of our B2B fleet is also kind of electrified with the 1 ton kind of a capacity. So I think the evolving of technology and product have definitely helped in bringing this onto track, and we are still counting on it.
Thank you, RK. Thank you for sharing how the technology and products have evolved over the years and how the ecosystem around servicing is also maturing. Vikash, inviting you to wrap up this opening round next.
No, I think this has been a great listening from all the experts. In my view, the biggest catalyst for this transition has been two things. One is this TCO parity has been achieved in most of the form factors. And there's two reasons behind it. One is how lithium ion cell pricing has decreased over the last decade or so. In 2010, it was $1,000 per kilowatt hour. In 2020, it came down to $200 per kilowatt hour. And now in the last year or so, it came below $100 also. This has helped in terms of reducing the upfront cost of the vehicle, as well as packing more lithium ion cells into the battery pack and getting better range and better product in the end. And second, policy push from the central government, supplemented and complemented by state governments, has been a great catalyst. In 2018, FAME 2 was notified, and post that we have seen a multiple version coming from the government, whether it's a PM e-drive scheme, whether it's a state government of Maharashtra, Karnataka, UP, Delhi. They are all saying the same thing with the same intention and same consistency. So because of this, both policy push, which is helping not only in terms of getting fiscal subsidies, but also in terms of non-fiscal subsidy, where we are getting a entry into the Delhi city without any problem. EV can do about 24/7 delivery. So the efficiency is better in EV compared to the ICE vehicle. So I think combination of the policy push from the central government and the state government, with a combination of reduction the price of the lithium and cell, has improved the TCO parity and TCO competitiveness, and that has been a large factor in terms of EV adoption in the e-commerce sector.
Thank you, Vikash, and thank you for touching upon a very critical aspect that has also evolved over the years, the battery and the lithium ion cells. I think thank you everyone. This gives us a very useful starting picture of how the sector has evolved and what each of you sees as the markers for scale. Let me now move to some speaker-specific questions for each of you. I'll start with Achint. Achint, Safexpress operates one of India's largest integrated logistics and supply chain networks. And unlike many organizations that began their EV journey through last mile, Safexpress brings a broader perspective on how electrification may evolve across the larger freight operations as well, especially across mid-mile and first mile. From Safexpress's electric mobility journey so far, what practical lessons can help other logistics operators accelerate their EV transition, especially as the sector moves beyond last mile as well? Over to you,
Chetna,
Achint.
as I told you earlier, our vendor base is very different from what other transporters operate with. We operate not on per kilometer basis, but on per kg basis. And because of which the vendors are responsible for pickup as well as delivery. So they have to provide manpower as well. And the profile of the vendors is relatively smaller compared to what you see in other e-commerce companies or other B2B companies. In this scenario, like us, there will be multiple small time companies also following the same model. For them to adopt, the most important thing is that they would have to understand that this is not a transportation or a vehicle providing business. This is a investment on infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, it is something to do which involves the cost of electricity, the charging, the driver training, the availability of finance to these small time players. Everything needs to be taken care in one go. Secondly, what happens is when you buy a diesel or an ice vehicle, if there is something wrong with the vehicle, people blame the operator that there is something wrong with the operator, he's not able to run the vehicle. But when something goes wrong with the electric vehicle, people straight away say that the product is bad and nothing to do with the operator, because the industry's new people end up blaming it to the vehicle than the operators. So the visibility of how the product is performing, like Maxin, in Magenta, you get how the vehicle is performing. Even MoEVing has a dashboard wherein you see how the vehicle is performing. So all these companies all these OEMs already have a platform with them wherein you can see how the vehicle performs. That needs to be integrated with all our system so that we know how the vehicle is performing, how is the operator actually treating the product. So if the product is designed to run at a certain speed, at a certain charge, battery SOC, and he's abusing the product time and again, the product will break down. Not immediately, but after some time, and then there will be replication. So, and the driver training in this aspect is very important, and education on the availability of green meters, cheaper electricity, all these needs. So it may come as a shocker. I'm just giving you a heads up here. So when we talk about electric vehicles, everybody says that the payload gets compromised because of the battery pack. Let us compare the most selling model in this 3.5 ton category is Tata Intra or a Switch or a Mantra or anything. So Tata Intra today, if you take a diesel vehicle, the payload which you get after the container body is made and everything is around 1140 kgs. They may say 1700 kgs, but after the container is built, it is 1140 kgs. But in a counterpart, which is electric, the payload that you get is 1340 kgs. So the biggest myth that you lose payload advantage in EV is gone. And that is true for all category of vehicles. So not many people are realizing it today, but yes, with time you will see that because government is allowing these vehicles to run in no entry, they are giving a registration benefit and everything. With government policies, you will have to adopt. So these are the learnings which we had over the years. But yes, you'll have to handhold the transporter for at least first 6 months, and after that only he'll be able to stabilize, and that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Achint. Thank you for sharing the learnings from your operation so far. Gowri, coming to you next. Yulu has shown how high utilization EV operations can become commercially viable through strong partnerships and alignment between vehicles, users, batteries, technology, and more. From your experience, what makes an EV partnership successful? And what lessons can e-commerce companies apply when working with mobility, fleet, battery, and technology providers?
Sure. Um, so I'll just take a step back and just set a little additional context for how Yulu works. Uh, Yulu owns these electric bikes. These are manufactured by Bajaj. We own the entire fleet. The technology that we use to map the usage of the bike and the battery, all of that is in-house as well. So one of our biggest parameters, or if and when we look at partnerships, we look at the e-commerce companies like a Zomato or a Swiggy or a bigbasket or a Flipkart. And for us, success is majorly defined by two or three things. One is if we can work on building demand density and route optimization, right? If we can do that together, because end goal for both the businesses is to tap on the demand. So if we can identify the core areas where there is more demand and we can sort of figure out a way to design routes, design battery swapping stations, design warehouses and workshops based on that, I think that makes for a great, partnership. The second is this is how to make things better. There are also cases of failures, right, where either the rider is free and is not getting enough orders, or there are bikes that are not working well, or there are other aspects of failure. Sharing of knowledge between these business operators and fleet operators is also, I think, major to defining successful partnerships, because our end goal, when we look at our end users, which are the gig workers, at the end of the day, we want them to be able to use the bike to the best possible utilization, make as many orders delivered as possible. And the third thing, which I think is a softer aspect of bikes like Yulu on the road, is road safety. One of the things that often gets missed when we look at this entire ecosystem is somebody mentioned that most of the goods that get moved in India are on the road. But I feel like road safety is an aspect when people look at partnerships get missed a lot. So for me, I would say these are three parameters based on which I define successful partnerships with the businesses that we work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Gowri, and thank you for touching upon some of the challenges around utilization, breakdowns, and road safety. Let me bring in the fleet operations and charging strategy perspective. Maxim, my next question is for you. Magenta has emerged as an integrated electric logistics player, combining EV fleet deployment with charging infrastructure, technology, and partnerships across sectors. As EV adoption moves beyond pilots, charging is going to be very critical. From Magenta's experience, how can fleet operations and charging strategies be aligned to support the deployment and scale? And also integrating one more question and also building on what Gowri said, some of the challenges that fleet operators usually face are around the attrition rate in the sector and vehicle not being utilized enough. So how are you addressing some of these challenges that the sector is facing?
The question essentially is what is the business you're doing? Because that's all the challenges all packed in one.
Very loaded question.
Yeah, but let me attempt a few of them. I think first is charging, and you have to understand that in the e-commerce segment, and we are talking about last mile. But then if you're looking at the entire spectrum, I call it the problem of two, which is the urban charging, urban ecosystem charging challenge is different, and the long haul charging challenge is different. Because in urban, it's the cost of real estate, right? Because and on the highways, it's the availability of stable power, right? So these are two separate problems within a single problem. So, and I like to break it down. And urban essentially is because charging for me as my vehicle is there. It's the availability of land at the right place, right? And this is the challenge in urban. So I think I just wanted to address that, and that is where we partnered. Initially Magenta was doing a lot of work in the charging space. We did that. We partnered as well. What we realized is it is not about having what do you say, large park charging base. It was charging and the ability to move the vehicles from charging to a parking ecosystem, right? And for that, we had to see the technology we had to use technology to see how much hours the vehicle is charging, then move them out. So we had to optimize. I think because the cost of real estate was the straight direct driver into the unit economics and nothing else in the charging, right? The second, of course, the related problem initially was the infrastructure. Last mile infrastructure of charging electricity was different in different states. Leave aside different states. Within same state itself, it's different. I mean, because we are governed by different laws. I mean, RECs define a lot of things. So stable power was an issue. So, but those are not today a problem. I think today the problem has moved from a technical problem to a unit economics level problem. Right? So, but this is only in the last mile autonomy. In the first mile long hauls, I think today still it's the leave aside unit economics, still the technology problem of where to put it up and how to get the and largely because there it's large DC charging infrastructure, which is a lot more expensive on the infra side, right? So that's where charging is. But now this was one problem that and how we have solved it is of course for us before we launch into a certain location we had a entire charging management team who within them they had first is the team which went and found out the locations, right? And there we had to partner because we had to partner with bays, with parking areas, with the government officials, the government agencies, essentially who had availability to these parking lots. For example, in Mumbai, I think close to around 40% of our charging happens in places which is governed by the Mumbai Corporation, right? In Bhiwandi, we've managed something else. There we are working with the clients because they have access to areas. So I think I will not say that this is one problem, one solution. It's multiple problems and it's very layered. But the important problem that you talked about is, I think the movement of people, the movement of that, it is not an EV problem, it's a logistics problem, right? And I want to be upfront about it. But in fact, fortunately, there's an important thing. In the EV ecosystem, two things are in our favor. One, the fact that these vehicles are very easy to drive, right? These are less on stress, and Gowri knows this, Vikas knows this. Second, so hence there is the kind of tiredness or the fatigue value is lesser. Second point, and very important point, which many people miss, is the realization that companies like, and I'm not trying to glorify myself or Magenta or something, but it's companies like Magenta, MoEVing, Yulu who've been able to solve these problems together because there is an institution to solve that problem. Earlier, trust me, if we had let it to the individuals to solve the problem, today the adoption would still not have been there. So it has taken companies like us to invest time, effort, sacrifice, burn money, and stabilize that ecosystem. So to that extent, I don't see the instability of the people it's a logistics issue and not so much of an EV issue. The third part is, which you talked about, is utilization. Unfortunately, and this is where EV has a downtime because of charging. And unfortunately, the logistics industry in India, and this is a straight calculation, close to around 40% of all the trucks in India are not running on the road, they're standing on the road. Right? For whatever reasons, customer is making them wait for whatever reason. So there are multiple reasons for this. What we have been able to see, and I just want to give a view of timing, the kind of downtime because of vehicles, technical issues, be it battery management system, has technically reduced. Right? It has actually come to a point where the serviceability, etc., by companies has been improved. So if there is any downtime, I would say a larger portion of this is the ability to, it's an operational issue right now. Right? So, and no longer a charging issue or a tech issue. But this is where one of the things I think we are still missing is, Gowri did touch upon it, is the data sharing. I believe that, and I've always said that an electric vehicle is sending every 15 seconds information to us. There's charging information. But I think it's time for companies, especially in the logistics side of EV, to come together and then work with clients like bigbasket and others and try to see how we can optimize this. Because unfortunately, and it's true even in EV, there is a lot of wastage in capital, wastage in vehicles, standing time. So I think the only way to manage that is use data to kind of cut this waste, and we will have to kind of take a view. And this is where I'm going to ask some of the clients to start saying, hey, listen, as a client, I'm guaranteeing you business. Instead of trying to compete, why can't you collaborate and come to me and say, okay, the same vehicle I'm going to use here and here. But I think it's now going to be quickly going to move from a pure ops problem to a data ops kind of a problem. And the time has come for something like this. And I would urge through the Shoonya platform for some of the, this is not to, it's just, I think, companies, e-commerce companies have actually been the one because of whom the adoption has been easier, because they guaranteed business. Now, if they were to take that one step and say guarantee optimization through doing this, I think we have a winner. Tall ask, but I think it's conversations like this have to start happening.
Thank you, Max, and thank you for covering all the aspects from charging to utilization to now evolving business needs. Let me now move to the role of customer-facing businesses and consumer awareness. RK, coming to you next. bigbasket has been scaling EV adoption across its delivery fleet while also engaging directly with millions of consumers through its platform. Much of the EV conversation focuses on fleets, charging, vehicles, technology. From bigbasket point of view, how can e-commerce companies bring consumers into this transition? And can consumer-facing initiatives help create strong demand for sustainable delivery?
Great. So basically, what happens is currently the consumers or the customers are kind of adopting or looking at the platforms based on assortment, pricing, and speed. While I think one of the key criteria where we can have inclusiveness from the consumers based on green mile, the electrification being used in various miles of the logistics that is being used to deliver the last mile to the customer is this one of the thing that I think if we start bringing awareness to the consumer, saying that the platforms using more of green initiatives helping to decarbonize and supporting towards green initiatives can kind of help in terms of bringing awareness, because at some point of time all these efforts being put in terms of building the capex, building the opex, and making sure the various miles of logistics are being decarbonized, at least helps the customer, that the delivery which has reached to the customer has helped in reducing carbon footprint and bringing sustainability. At the end of the day, we all have the responsibility to contribute in a smaller or larger way to the green initiative. And I guess this through this kind of awareness, we should kind of build this kind of inclinedness at the customer also, that every time they are ordering a product, they should kind of look at how it is helping them to contribute toward the sustainability initiatives. Adding to that, in fact, while a large portion of our last mile we were able to electrify, and we have been keep on working towards it to increase to larger numbers. In the middle mile part of it also, while we were trying to increase the penetration, we were kind of initially facing challenges in terms of having the right infrastructure, because most of the fulfillment centers are in locations which is little outskirts or industrial hubs, logistics park areas, where availability of the charging and parking operation are bit critical, and hence I think logistics companies do face some challenge, and hence whenever we have been trying to increase the penetration into the mid mile, where kind of the fulfillment centers do supply to the dark stores in a frequency of almost 2 to 3 times a day, considering the demand and the replenishment, we are seeing the challenges, and we have been kind of working to figure out a better solution around it. I think all these things can be driven in a better way when we are seeing these kind of inclinedness from the customers, and helping these companies to kind of go one more step ahead and figuring out how we can have better infrastructure to help achieving these sustainability goals.
Thank you, RK. I think very well aligned with you. It's important to communicate the benefits of EVs to the customers and how they are contributing to the sustainability goals. That's been the essence of the Shoonya campaign as well. That while working with businesses, it's important to motivate customers to also adopt electric vehicles. Thank you, RK. Moving to Vikash next. MoEVing has focused on electric freight from the start, working across demand aggregation, fleet operation, charging, financing, and whatnot. From your experience, how has the market for electric freight evolved over the past few years? What enablers would be most critical for the next phase of growth? And whether it is in policy, financing, or charging. And I see a lot of questions coming on financing alone. So, what role do you think financing is playing in the ecosystem, and what else needs to be done to sort of empower these gig workers who are on these platforms?
Let's look at evolution from two perspectives, Chetna. One is from the demand perspective. From demand perspective, the one change we have seen is earlier it was more about a pilot, let me try it once. And now we are talking about from pilot to scale. Same customer who has been trying to do one EV, two EV, five EVs, they are asking for 100 EVs now. So it has moved from a pilot level to scale level already in the segment. Now, supply side, when we started moving, 0.5 ton was the highest payload that you can move in a single day, that too using a three-wheeler. Now we are talking the supply side, we can move from 0.5 ton to 55 ton in a single vehicle. And that too from three-wheeler and two-wheeler that was happening 5 years back. Now we are seeing multiple form factors in two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and four-wheeler coming there. So both on the supply side, there has been a product maturity and more form factor accessible to the ecosystem. And demand side, it also moved from pilot to scale. So that's fantastic collaboration. And two aspects where it needs more is on the charging infra and financing side. And I think Max has spoken a lot about charging infra, so I'll skip that. But financing side, what's more important is that it has to be backed by a long-term contract from the customers. Customers should treat EV as not as a 1 year contract, but anyone who's putting EV like a 3 year, 5 year, and 7 year contract. And that contract becomes a bankable contract from a financing perspective. So we can then go back to bank and the financiers that please give us a loan tenure of 6 years, 7 years. It helps us reduce the lease amount upfront, and we will be able to pass the benefit to the customers if the lease cost is lower. Second thing is in terms of IRR. And my wish is that all the financiers consider EV same as the ICE vehicle, and not like if it's an EV, then you add 5% more in terms of interest rate. So if the commercial terms of a EV financing is same as the diesel, and the tenure financing problem can be solved, and the adoption that is happening in the three-wheeler space. In three-wheeler, the EV adoption is already crossed 50% and above, and it is because the TCO parity has been achieved even with no subsidy in the three-wheeler, even with no additional push for three-wheelers. The market has adopted three-wheeler auto naturally, and I believe that if same thing will happen to four-wheeler as well, once the TCO parity is further achieved in multiple form factors, I think last mile is already happened. We are seeing a lot of
Vikash, I think we lost you for a bit. Can't hear you, Vikash. Can't hear you. I think we lost him for a bit, but I think he was able to cover most of the things with respect to the financing and need for better commercial terms. when compared to petrol, diesel, and CNG vehicles as well. I'll see if Vikash, I see you've joined. Do you want to complete that thought?
Can you hear me now, Jetna?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Sorry for there was a bit of a disruption. So I was saying that supply side, we are seeing a good improvement in the product. On the demand side, we are seeing the pilot to scale. Financing needs improvement, and if you can get a long-term contract, long tenure, same interest rate as the ICE vehicle, the EV adoption will further accelerate. And I believe that what we have seen in the electric three-wheeler cargo space, same thing can happen in electric four-wheeler space as well if all of the ecosystem players work together.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vikash, for covering financing side of things. Gowri, I see you have a hand up. So would you like to come in
Yes.
here?
Yeah, just a quick thought. I think people here are talking about financing of EVs, and I'll just quickly want to cover something on, two-wheelers, especially electric two-wheelers. The assumption that I think most government policies have is that people want to buy and own a bike. And most of the policies are designed on how to make it cheaper, how to incentivize for a gig worker in this case to own an EV bike. But if we look at a greener city or a greener country, we might have as many EVs on the road, but we're still going to be an extremely congested city and country, right? So if the policy could move away from just incentivizing personal ownership and also think of how to make the life of shared mobility. I think Maxon covered about infrastructure. I think that's one of the biggest costs that EV companies face, even when we look at government partnerships. The government wants EVs. They want more fleet owners. They want more battery swapping, operators. But the moment we discuss on land, the cost is exorbitant. And so going back to the policies need to be designed thinking of how to really make EVs accessible for all, and not just think about personal ownership of vehicles. So financing in that context, if I think of a Yulu bike, nobody needs to buy the bike. They can, these are rental bikes, and I'm sure there are many others in the ecosystem. So just wanted to put that out because financing has been in discussion, like you said, for a while, even on the chat. So thought I should bring that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you for covering shared mobility side of things. We are at time, but I just want, if everyone's schedule allows, I just want to do one or two rapid fire questions. Won't take a lot of time. I think just one word or one line maybe, and just two questions in the same order of speakers. One word that describes the future of e-commerce electrification in India, starting with Achint.
Faster adoption. That's
Gauri?
about it.
For me, public transport.
Maxim?
Why wait?
RK?
Better infrastructure.
Vikash?
100% potential of EV adoption.
Amazing. Another one development over the last 5 years that has exceeded your expectations.
Newer OEMs coming in, better major players coming in now.
Gauri?
Same, absolutely. Great products in the market.
Maxim?
I will say just a twist to it, consolidation, the correct players coming into the market.
Amazing. RK?
I'd say great battery capacity is pretty.
Vikash?
West Asia crisis making TCO parity and TCO more competitive.
Feeder.
Amazing. I'm just being greedy, so going ahead with the last one. I really enjoyed this session. Complete the sentence. By 2030, electric freight movement in India will dash.
Will pick up, will accelerate.
Gauri?
Will be the biggest chunk of, how goods are moved in the country.
Maxim?
will decide the future of logistics in India.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, so with the evolving of technology, we can see it scaling really faster. So it is directly proportionate to the evolving of infrastructure, technology, everything.
Perfect. Vikas?
India becoming the top 5 countries in EV adoption.
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for a rich and timely discussion and for this quick rapid fire. Really appreciate staying for a little longer. What comes through clearly is that e-commerce electrification is moving beyond last mile, and early pilots towards first and middle mile are encouraging to see. We also heard that scaling EV fleets require much more than vehicles at this stage. It will depend on the right routes, the high utilization, reliable charging, accessible and affordable financing, and even broader and more consumer awareness. And as e-commerce continues to grow, electrifying fleet and freight across supply chains can help reduce emissions, improve air quality, and help India transition toward more efficient logistics systems. Thank you, everyone who joined us today for the Shoonya webinar session. And thank you once again to all of our speakers, Achint, Gowri, Maxine, RK, and Vikash, for sharing your insights and experience. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.